All right, welcome into today's show. We are joined by Dustin Rudd. He is the pitmaster of Blue Collar BBQ, based out of Southhaven, Mississippi. Dustin, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Man, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So for our listeners, this was a long time in the making. We've had this scheduled a couple different times, and I've had to reschedule due to kids getting sick and everything else under the sun. So we're excited to make this happen. We are going to dive into Dustin's journey today. And just to give our listeners some more context, I was able to connect with Dustin briefly, very briefly, at the 2022 Pig Jig down in Vienna, Georgia, back in the beginning of November. And in fact, that very contest, Dustin took home the grand championship. So he did it with his ribs. So we're going to chat about that. We're going to chat about his journey. So we'll dive right into this. So Dustin, let's chat about this journey, this barbecue journey, right? So I see you smiling every time I ask this question. Everybody seems to kind of smile. How did all this start? How did you get to where you are today?
Man, oddly enough, it started, I guess I was about 17 years old, and the neighbors that lived behind my family at the time moved out of their house. And when they moved out, they left one of those cheap hardware store Brinkman offset smokers at the house when they moved off. So I walked over to the street over and grabbed a hold of that old cheap Brinkman smoker and drug it back to the house, and man, cooked on that thing until I cooked the bottom out of it. And at that point, I had done so much cooking, and I truly found how passionate I was about it. I was like, well, let's go ahead and make a go with this thing. Now, any sane, reasonable person would have been like, well, let me get out here and see if I can find a backyard contest and kind of get my feet wet. But I've never been accused of being reasonable. So I jumped right on out there in the pros and took the local contest, and we got a third place chicken in our first contest. And at that point, it was just no turning back at that point.
So when you started out, and I love your attitude. You're very similar to me. We didn't even go backyard. We just went all in. Sometimes that works for some people, sometimes it doesn't. I know that the Memphis Barbecue Network, MBN, for our listeners, I know it's big in the Mississippi area. Is that where you started? Was that your first pro contest?
No, my first pro contest was a backyard unsanctioned contest. And then after that, I started cooking KCBS, and I cooked for KCBS for 3 years exclusively. I didn't get into NBN, I guess about 3 years ago. It was local, but I never really got into NBN. The whole on-site presentation just never really sat well with me. My thinking was always, I turned in food, whether my food's good or not. I shouldn't have to sit here for 15 minutes to convince you my food was good when you're eating it. And it took me a long time to get past that mindset and actually go in with an open mind and give it a shot.
I love that. So very similar then to a lot of folks. I think a lot of people, they do some unsanctioned a little bit, then they jump right into, something pro like KCBS. And it is a lot different than MBN. That was the Pig Jig was our first MBN contest. And I like it. I like the format of it. And I actually like the on-site judging. I think that's, I like the showmanship side of it. I mean, I understand, from your point, either you have good barbecue or you don't. I'm curious though, take us back to that transition for you when you made that decision to shift gears from KCBS to focus more so on MBN. What was that like?
Well, I tell you, I initially made the change because when I started my team, it was me and my brother-in-law cooking. And my brother-in-law and my sister decided to move to Washington. And when they did, my wife stepped in and took his place on the team. You cook competition. It's hard cooking KCBS with a full team. It's really hard with just me and the wife. Doing 4 meets was just really taking a toll. And by the end of the contest, we got to where we didn't even want to be around each other because we bickered and fought so much trying to make it 2-4 turn-ins. So I started looking at NBN, and I was like, well, nothing else. We can go over here and spend $150 and just cook a rib, and you can win a contest just cooking a rib. You don't have to cook 4 meats. So I said, well, we'll give it a shot. And just like anything else, it was like starting all over in competition barbecue. Them first two contests, I got my teeth kicked in. And I was like, well, maybe I just need to stay over here in KCBS. But the wife said, no, we got to stick it out. And we stayed over there. And of course, it's a learning curve. I mean, it's completely different than KCBS, different flavor profiles. And of course, you're cooking baby backs as opposed to spare ribs. And they want a different tenderness level on the baby backs than they do the spares. So there was a big learning curve. But we finally got to a place where we started figuring out what exactly it was they were looking for. And once we figured that out, we just hit the ground running.
So that's a good point that you bring up. There are, something that's key to understand when you're getting into competition barbecue and really just barbecue in general. The cool thing about barbecue is that, at least in the United States, it's regional. You go to Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, you're going to get a little bit different spin no matter where you go. All good barbecue, right? It's just a little bit different spin on what they offer, how they cook it, what they specialize in. For you, you talked about the different flavor profiles. What, just in your mind, what do you see as the biggest difference between the KCBS side of things and the MBN side of things?
Well, up through the middle of this season, I would have said spice. KCBS, of course, likes a little more spice in their barbecue, and Memphis has always been predominantly sweet, and that was the big thing for us. We're still trying to hang on to a little bit of spice there, and it just wasn't doing well. And finally, we decided, we're just going to run super sweet and see how it does. And it did really well for a long time. Last season we cooked 12 contests and we finaled 10 of the contests. It was doing really well. Then the middle of this season, of course, like every barbecue sanctioning body, there's been an issue with finding judges. And NBN was no different. And this season, we hit a spell there in the middle where we were having a hard time finding judges for contests. They started certifying a lot of new judges just to fill these contests out. And once you have a big turnover in judges and start introducing a lot of new judges to the judging pool, you're introducing new flavor profiles. And when these new judges came in, they were looking for a little more spice. And it threw us for a loop. We went through a 4 contest stretch there where we were just getting hammered, and we were like, what is going on? This is tried and true. It's worked so well, and now I can't buy a call. So I started asking around, talking to different people, and they were like, they're more spice now. And so I went back to running more of a profile like I was running at KCBS, and it started scoring well again. So now I would say there's not a whole lot of difference in being in KCBS now. There's a lot of crossover. Even this year at Galax, Virginia, they 2 out of the 3 finals were KCBS teams in ribs. So it's really opened it up, and anybody can switch over now. Any KCBS team can come to NBN now and be successful because the flavor profiles have gotten eerily similar.
That's a good point. Hadn't considered that. And, in our region, the Augusta area, there really isn't a whole lot of competitions in general. Usually we're driving 2 or 3 hours and the closest ones are more KCBS. But I like what you said earlier, and that is, you can cook an MBN, you can cook one category, ribs or, hog or, shoulder, and you can win. Yeah. So that the barrier, the financial burden is not as steep, as it is with, especially on the pro side of KCBS. You start talking about, those A9 or those, Snake River briskets, your investment starts to go up in a big way. And I wanted to camp out on that for a second. The financial side of things is interesting to me, as that's what I do for a living. That's my career as a certified financial planner. So I'm always looking at the financial side of things, and it's no secret, competition barbecue is not a good retirement strategy. That is no secret. However, at the end of the day, I think that it is something that a lot of people enjoy, myself included, and I wanted to figure out a way to at least make it sustainable, right? Because you and I both know, unless you've got a trust fund somewhere, it's hard to commit $800 to $1,000 a weekend several times a month. That can get pretty costly unless you're like some of those folks in the Kansas City area who win every other contest, but you can't really count on that. So I'm curious from your side of things, because I get this question a lot. I get this question, especially from folks that are wanting to get into it. It's a lot of times it's around that financial side of things. How do you stay in it? How do you budget accordingly? So what advice would you have there for those folks? I mean, how have you been able to keep costs, reasonable, still enjoy yourself and still, perform well like you've been performing?
It's hard. It's a balancing act. There's a fine line there. And that's where it gets tricky with KCBS is, with NBA, you can come in and do one category. That's not an option with KCBS. I think a lot of the reason that SCA has got so popular is because, number one, it gives people an avenue to cook competition without the large financial obligation that you would have with a normal barbecue contest. But also, it's a one-day deal. You can show up on Saturday morning and cook a steak and be home Saturday evening. And I really think that's something that, NBN's kind of got. I mean, if you wanted to cook a rib, you could show up at Saturday morning on the NBN contest. If you were running hot bag, if you were running a stick burner or you were running a drum, if you wanted to show up at 6 o'clock and fire up and throw a rib on, you could do that. I really think that's something that barbecue should explore further. I know KCBS has explored a little bit of the one meat categories and stuff on Friday nights at some of these contests. I really think that's something, if we push that more, that one meat category, number one, it would make it available to more people. A lot of people may not be able to afford $1,000 to cook a full 4-meat contest, but they might be able to afford $250, $150 entry fee and $100 for 4 slabs of ribs to come out and cook, or vice versa with 4 pork butts or whatever. So maybe just open it up, to where you're not necessarily eligible for grand, but if you want to come in and just cook one category, you can pay $100 to enter and just come cook one category just to get your feet wet. Now, as far as being sustainable, man, I don't know how to answer that. I spent a lot of years robbing Peter to pay Paul just to get from contest to contest. I hate to sound cliche. Once we started getting more successful and winning money, that's really what you have to do if you're going to make any kind of serious commitment to this, doing it long term and doing multiple contests. Because each contest needs to be paying the majority of the next contest. If it doesn't, then you're going to run out of money quick. I mean, even winning money every contest, if you're at $700-800 a contest, even if you win $500 a contest, you're cooking 2 a month. I mean, you're still $600 a month out of pocket. A lot of people don't have $600 a month just in a leisure fund sitting somewhere to hang out on the weekends. So I don't know. I think one meat categories or contests is one way to go about it. The good thing about NBN is it hasn't. I mean, when I cook a contest, I go down to my local butcher on ribs. I'm running Prairie Fresh Primes, which are available to everybody. Pay $20 a slab for those. Buy them by the case, and I think it's $20 a case trimmed out the door. And even on my pork, I run just regular old Seaboard Farm pork. You can get down at any restaurant depot or any restaurant supply store, and you can be successful doing that. I mean, some of the cooks are cooking part, but for the most part, people are just cooking your upper end commodity pork that you can get at the grocery store, and it keeps the cost down. It just makes it a lot more financially feasible to do it than it does in KCBS.
That's a great point. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about, the growth and the popularity of the SCA, the State Cook-Off Association, and these one meat Friday night contests. I think it's a great idea. And I agree with you that the KCBS as an organization needs to adopt that more. It's no secret that, competitions are down, participation is down across the board. I know that obviously COVID and 2.5 years ago, that no one saw that coming. So that hurt things. But I also think it's and this is something I'm really passionate about. To me, barbecue, whether it's competing or whether it's just cooking at home, to me, barbecue is all about people, right? It's all about coming together, breaking bread, eating good food, connecting with somebody. And I think one of the areas, and I want to get your take on this, but I think one of the areas that a lot of these sanctioning bodies, particularly KCBS, can do a better job in is really engaging the public more, right? I think that's really, really important, especially to make sure that, these contests, these competitions are relevant. They stay relevant to event promoters, event organizers. Now, of course, the contests that are just purely a contest and that's it, that's something different. But I think, attaching itself to a festival or something like that, I think that we as teams we got to provide some value. And, I'm curious, I've got a few ideas myself on how we could do that as teams and still compete and not be, not take up all of our time chatting with folks. I've got a few ideas, but I wanted to hear your ideas. What, in your mind, what are some ways that you feel like teams can, work together to just be more public friendly and be more open to engaging with the public?
And see, that's tricky. I've gone back and forth, and I've had that conversation with a couple people, and it's kind of which came first, the chicken or the egg kind of deal, because we're in a situation now. Well, once you buy all of these high end meats, that's your focus. If you spent $250 on a brisket, you don't want to focus on anything but that brisket, because you can't risk ruining a $250 piece of meat to sit around and talk to people. And we've got to a point in barbecue where the heyday of competition barbecue was when barbecue pitmasters come out. People were watching it on TV. People were like, "Hey, I didn't know this was a thing." People were excited. They were going out and they were like, "I think I can do this. That looks like something I would like to do." And during that time, you were seeing a lot of new teams come in. I mean, I come in that time. I tell everybody, watch barbecue pitmasters, and Myron used to make me so mad with his arrogant attitude that I was like, I want to go out there and beat this guy. And that was one of the reasons that I started in KCBS, because I was like, I need to figure out how I can get good enough to beat this guy. We got to a point where not only are we spending all this money on this high dollar meat, but everybody's pouring out here in these high dollar rigs, and everybody just wants to sit in the trailer all weekend in the air conditioner. And I can't sound blame it. It's 100 degrees outside. You're going to spend a significant portion of your weekend awake with these meats. I understand you want to relax as much as you can, but I also understand that we have to have public engagement, because barbecue as a whole has lost a lot of its following, not only from the public, but from a corporate standpoint. The corporate money's not coming in anymore because we don't have the engagement with the public that we once had. I think the easiest way to do it, and I think most cooks could commit to it. I know some can't, because some of them, as soon as the contest are over, they're on the road headed back home, because some of these guys are driving 5, 6, 7 hours for these contests. But I think the easiest way to do it, end of a contest, let's just pack that leftover meat up. Teams meet up in the judging tent and almost do like it doesn't even have to be like a people's choice contest. Just go in there and put all your barbecue out, let the public come in, eat your leftovers. I mean, we all know we don't want that leftover barbecue. We're eating that stuff 30 weekends a year or better. We don't want it. But it's a real treat for them. So that'll draw people in, and it'll give them time to eat good barbecue, but also be able to interact with the cook, ask questions, kind of get a feel for it, and hopefully encourage some of them to do it. The other thing is, and like we talked about, the high cost of meat. I've said this over and over again, and we could do it. It would just take all the cooks committing to doing it, and that's the hard part, because some people would be like, "Yeah, I would do it," and then not really do it. If all the cooks would just band together and be like, "You know what? We're not going to buy these Wagyu briskets anymore. We're not going to buy this high-dollar boutique pork. We're going to go back to buying prime briskets at the restaurant depot or whatever. We're going to go back to buying our pork at the grocery store," and get it back down to where a person could cook a barbecue contest for $500. And I think it would draw a lot more people in Because people might not necessarily be able to afford $1,000 for a contest, but if you cut that in half and we get back to 500, you're going to get a lot more people involved. And I think that's the biggest thing. We've got to figure out a way to get costs down, and people aren't going to get engaged unless they feel turn around and look at people cooking barbecue. That's cool. Walking around looking at some of these high dollar smokers and rigs. That's cool. But if the people are out there, it's because 9 times out of 10, everybody's had it. Hey, are y'all selling barbecue? Can I have some barbecue? People are coming out. They want to eat barbecue or they want to talk about barbecue. And right now, we're not doing either one of them. So we're really not doing it justice to the people that are attending these contests or barbecue as a whole. Because if we've got these people coming out and we have a chance to do something to draw them in and keep them coming and we're not doing it, then we're not doing our part either.
Amen. You couldn't have said it any better myself. And I'm with you. I see both sides of it. I see, like you said, it's a big investment of time, of money, of effort. And, on the other side, as you said, if every team, had the attitude that we're not going to engage with the public and we're going to stay in our trailer the whole weekend, then eventually I think competition barbecue as we know it would die. And so that's kind of where I come from is, obviously everybody's got their own opinion, their own perspective, and it's a free country after all, right? So they can do what they want. I just feel like if everybody has that same attitude that, hey, we're just going to keep to ourselves, then I don't think it's very sustainable. I love the idea about, having like I guess for lack of a better term, a grazing table, at the end of a contest. I also, have thought about, offering, designated times where the public can, engage with teams, maybe they get 15-minute increments or whatever, obviously if it's a KCBS, there's nothing between 11:30 and 1:30 and, MBN, nothing between, 10 and noon. And if you make that kind of thing, but just setting those parameters, because you're exactly right. The general public has no idea. They have no clue what competition barbecue really is. And when they're coming to a contest, a matter of fact, at the Pig Jig is a great example. We had folks coming up to us, hey, can you selling barbecue? You trying barbecue? Or can we try some? And we weren't selling down there, but we let them try some, but I can see their side. If I was just, visiting and walking around, yeah, heck yeah. I'm smelling all this barbecue. I mean, I want to try some. So I think you're right. We got to find a happy medium. And I think your idea about, I don't know if every team would do it, but I think, if we just said as teams, we said, look, we're just going to go buy the prime stuff. We're not buying this Wagyu anymore. I guess it's kind of like, steroids in professional sports, it only takes one person to start using the steroids, and then everybody uses it. So, but I agree with you. I think it's gotten away from really what barbecue's all about, and to me, it's all about people. I mean, if you look at the history of it, it involves people coming together, putting their combined efforts together and cooking a meal, whatever it may be. And I think, going back to what you said, everybody's got these, 45-foot toy haulers. They've got this Wagyu and Compart and you name it. And I get it. They want to focus on what they're trying to accomplish. Again, I just think that we got to find that happy medium. And I think another good point you brought up that I wanted to camp out on is, the marketing money, the corporate dollars, they're just not where they were. And I think a lot of that has to do with, that the public, is not really bought in. And in fact, it's interesting to me, and this is something that got me fired up and I wanted to camp out on it. And that is, the KCBS Invitational in Gadsden, Alabama, back in November. There was an article in the local newspaper in Gadsden, and the KCBS rep was quoted as saying, the public can come, but these are hardcore competitors. So basically leave them alone, but you can come to the awards. And I thought to myself, I get it. It's a big contest. But if I'm the general public and I read that, I'm going, why would I go to the awards? I don't know what they're talking about. I have no idea how they're scoring things, so to me, that's the message, unfortunately, I think that's being sent to the general public. And like I said, I get it. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of time. I just feel like we got to find that happy medium,
I agree. And that's one thing I will say. If you look at like Memphis and May, every year they have, tour of champions, where people can come in and you can buy a ticket and they take you around and you get to meet and greet with these teams. Some of them will give you barbecue, but it gives the public a chance to come in and actually interact with the teams. And that's another thing, that these other sanctioning bodies, could really look into, because barbecue is never going to grow unless we get more people in. And what we're doing is not working. The numbers are steadily declining, not increasing. I told my wife the other day, it seems like every time I get on Facebook or social media here lately, I'm seeing a post from somebody saying they're walking away from barbecue. I never see anybody saying, hey, I'm joining barbecue. It's always somebody leaving. We've got a lot of cooks that have cooked for years, a lot of the older cooks that are retiring, but there's not many young cooks coming up to replace them. And that's not a sustainable business model. If you're steadily losing and not bringing anything in, you're going to die like that. Like you said earlier, you're a finance guy. Everything's about ROI. If you're a company, why would you want to invest into a sport that there's no return on investment?
Right.
I mean, even if you're investing in the NBA or NASCAR or whoever, your product's all over TV. As a sanctioning body, as a sport of competition barbecue, right now, what do we have to offer corporations that we need to invest this money? We're not on TV, so they're not getting the national exposure that way. We offer nothing to the public that's going to draw the public in, where even if they're coming out and putting out flyers or banners or whatever, we're not drawing in people off the street to see their product and put it in front of new eyes. And most of the time, if we're going to get corporate money from somebody, it's going to have something to do with barbecue, whether it's a meat company or a charcoal company or whoever, somebody that's in the barbecue field. Well, let's be honest. The teams that are out there cooking, we already know about this product. So advertising for us is a waste of money. It does no good.
Right.
We know who you are. We know what you do. So there's no ROI for companies right now to get involved and put their money in. Money's already tight after COVID, and we offer absolutely nothing for them to get any kind of return on their investment into barbecue. So we've got to figure out something. Our best chance of getting corporate money and big sponsors is to get the public involved and get people more excited about it. That's one of the reasons why I was so excited when they brought out, I think it's called Barbecue USA, this new Michael Simon TV show.
Yep.
I was like, maybe there'll be a reinvigoration in people to get people excited again. Because most people agree the best years of competition barbecue corresponded with the best years of barbecue pitmasters. And that was the first few years, the ones where they were actually going to the contest and people could see what was going on. Not the one where they got 4 people in a field cooking 2 meats. It was those first couple of years when they were going to contests, they were actually seeing teams in their natural environment, cooking, preparing, everything that went into a contest. And then watching the awards, and Barbecue USA is kind of following that same model. Michael's going around, he's talking to teams, people can see what's going on behind the scenes. They can see how much work goes into this. They can see the awards at the end. But more than anything, when you watch that show, you can see teams interacting. You go to awards and you see teams rooting each other on and congratulating each other. And people get a chance to see, this, people use the phrase all the time, my barbecue family. And it's got kind of cliche at this point. But I mean, it really is. I mean, I can honestly say some of my best friends right now are people that I met through barbecue. Without competition barbecue, I probably would have never met these people and any other aspect of my normal life. So we've really got to get people more involved and more excited. And I think Barbecue USA will go a long way with that. I hope that it continues. And as teams, we say we love this sport, and in order to keep this sport, we've got to grow this sport. So we've got to be willing to make some sacrifices. You know, even most teams now are cooking hot and fast. So we're out there on Friday evenings and we're not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, you know, advertise, you know, come on out on Friday nights. You can walk around and talk to these things. I mean, let's be honest, anybody that cooks competition barbecue loves barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife will tell you, my favorite thing to talk about is barbecue. I don't care who you are. If you come up and you ask me a question about barbecue, I'll talk to you like for 2 hours, like I've known you my whole life, like we're the best of friends. And most barbecue cooks are that way. It just takes, you know, stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit, stepping out of that trailer, pitching a tent or chair next to your trailer there, and just sitting there and talking to people and engaging with the public.
Yeah, that's man, powerful stuff. We can talk about this stuff for probably an hour or two. You know, you hit it right on the head, man. We got to do better. That's the bottom line. We, as in the teams, need to do better and bring it back to where it all began, and that is, you know, the people. You know, barbecue is all about the people. So that's a powerful, powerful way to wind down our show. And before we end, where can our listeners connect with you on social media? What are your social media handles?
I am on Facebook at Blue Collar Barbecue, Instagram at Blue Collar Competition Barbecue Team, and that's my two biggest social media. That's where I do most of my interaction. More so on Facebook, just because it's a lot more user friendly than Instagram, where you're just posting pictures. But I tell everybody, I'm an open book. If you're watching this and you have any questions, if you're interested in competition barbecue, if you think you might want to get started in competition barbecue, if you're new to competition barbecue and you have questions, reach out to me. I will be more than glad to talk to anybody. I will answer any questions I can. I'll give you advice. I'll help you with flavor profile. I'll help you with whatever you need. Because at the end of the day, I love barbecue and I want barbecue to grow. And that's going to take getting more people involved. And we also lose a lot of teams that way. We get these new teams in and nobody helps them and they struggle and they just walk away from it. And that's one little way where I can help. If you're new and you have questions, reach out to me. I'll tell you anything you want to know.
Love it. Love it. We'll have, and for our listeners, we'll have those social media links in the show notes so you can easily connect. And again, we're chatting with the 2022 grand champion of the Big Pig Jig in Vienna, Georgia, Dustin Rudd, pitmaster of Blue Collar Barbecue. He's based out of Southhaven, Mississippi. Dustin, thanks again for coming on the show. Awesome discussion, sir.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.